everybody. It's Lee Norwood with the College Sharks, and I'm here with my test prep expert, Jackie, and we're going to play I Heard That. So, why do we have to test? Why do you take the official SAT or the ACT? Well, here are some things that we hear all the time. I heard that schools are test optional, so we don't have to take the test. I heard that my student's just not a good test taker. They're very anxious. Or I heard that schools do a holistic review, so testing really can't matter that much. And my student has so many other great things going for them. Jackie, let's be those myth busters. Talk to me about why it's important to test and to test often.
All right, myth busting. Here we go. So, first, I think it's really important that we differentiate what test optional means versus test required or test recommended or even test blind. So when they say test required, basically what that means is that you have to submit an SAT or ACT score to be considered for admission. So that is an essential part of your application. Test recommended is a new class that means that you don't technically have to submit a test score, but they're basically telling you, please submit a test score. Test optional means you don't have to submit a score, but if you did well, it will obviously benefit your application. And many schools that are test optional, we've come to realize are really test recommended. And the last case is test blind, which means that SAT or ACT scores are not even considered as a variable for your admissions. And the most noteworthy system that I can think of that's test blind is the UC system, the University of California.
Absolutely. So a lot of schools went test optional, in that COVID time where their test prep centers were not open and all these reasons that kids couldn't get there to test. But the pendulum is swinging the other way. And most recently, Ohio State just re-implemented testing being something that has to be part of your application. Also, University of Miami, University of Pennsylvania, University of Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. So those are state schools, Ivy League schools, and private schools that are all bringing testing back.
Mm-hmm. And another important thing to realize is that many schools may be test optional for admission. So you might get an acceptance letter to go to that school, but it's not test optional for merit scholarships. So if you hope to chip away at the cost of college, you probably want to have a test score. Yeah, just checking. All right. So, for example, if we were to look at the University of Alabama's out-of-state merit chart, where Ole Miss, you'll notice that there are certain test score and GPA combinations that will qualify you for automatic merit. So, having a test score is super helpful if you hope to crack away at the cost of college.
Absolutely. So, myth busting number one is that yes, some schools are test optional, but many schools do need test scores in the admissions process for either basic entry to the school, or sometimes it's setting you apart from another student with similar characteristics. Any majors that are super difficult to get into or highly selective, that test score can help you there. And it's a big part of the merit aid process. So, give me a couple other reasons to test even if a school does not require it.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing is some schools, let's say arts and sciences, their main, program, their main school may not require test scores, but specific programs might, right? Like BSMD, nursing, engineering, architecture, something super specialized might still require a minimum SAT or ACT score. Local scholarships. Yes, we want merit aid from the college, but we might want to also stack some local scholarships. A lot of them require test scores. And obviously, I think what's important to remember is that test scores have a place in the admission system for a reason. If you have a good test score, that will only benefit the chances of you getting into that school. And test scores do, to a good degree, predict success in college and freshman year GPA.
Absolutely. Here's one quick example. The University of Chicago, very highly selective school. They've been test optional before anyone else was even test optional.
Mhm.
But I think about 70+% of their admitted students show test scores. So it is a measure that is looked at for lots of different reasons. All right, myth number two. I heard that my student's just not a good test taker. What do you think?
Yeah, so Lee, I hear this probably on a daily basis.
Me too.
So let's talk about it. So, yes, it's possible that your student is not a good test taker, but what I find is that's often a veil for three different things. One is just a lack of exposure. The way that standardized testing presents questions is very different than how tests in school might present questions. It's a unit test versus a test of everything you've learned from seventh grade to present. Second thing is not studying. Just like anything else in life, if you don't have exposure, you need to do something about that in order to see improvement. You need to study and put in a lot of active effort in order to see test scores go up. And the third thing that we see is testing anxiety. So, of course, that's something that needs to be overcome, and we can help a student with that. But all three of those things are usually the reason why a student's not a good test taker. And in many cases, it's improvable.
I absolutely agree. Now, if your student has a notable diagnosis, the answer for that is to ask for extra time on either the SAT or the ACT so that you may get an accommodation because sometimes these things are real. It maybe a student isn't a good test taker, but Jackie and I are talking about the hundreds of students that we work with. And most of it is lack of preparation. So you heard it here first. You may think testing doesn't matter, but colleges view your application holistically, and what they put the most weight on, we don't know. So the best thing for you to do is put your best foot forward, demonstrate your college readiness, and allow the college to compare you with students across the country, because that's what standardized testing does. And we want you to stand out. So test and test often. It's like working out, right? You got to do the reps, put the sets in, gain the muscle memory, and then you'll be a better athlete or a stronger test taker. So if you click the link below, you're going to learn about the ways our test prep personal trainer, Jackie, can help you do your best with testing.